Welcome to Beyond the Blend, the podcast that goes behind the science and talks to the people at the heart of the lubricant market, telling the real story of the people who make the lubricant market move. With real insight and honest conversations, we aim to show off the people's side from across the entire lubricant supply chain. Join me, Steve Knapp, and Rob Taylor as we delve behind the scenes of the lubricant industry. Let's go. Let's start with a quick 5 from 5. Jade, your first love, horses or cage fighting?
Horses.
Work mode here, lab coat and test tubes, or high-vis, hard hat and a plant room?
Ooh, that is a difficult question. Depends what day of the week it is, but I'm going to have to say lab coat.
So where are you happiest on site? Looking at oil analysis data on a screen or standing next to a machine and hearing it run?
Next to the machine.
Next to the machine. So the best kind of conversation, explaining STEM to school kids or challenging engineers on their lubrication practices?
I would say explaining STEM to school kids, purely because I don't do that as much.
Okay, and the fifth one, big night out, karaoke with the team or a long sit-down dinner with a good conversation?
Karaoke with the team, definitely.
Fantastic. Welcome back to Beyond the Blend, and today I'm joined by Jade Thompson, RecondOil UK champion and global technical support. Jade's route into lubricants wasn't exactly conventional. She originally needed lab experience for a master's in equine parasitology. Now there's a conversation starter. Since then, she's led reliability labs, written about the chemistry behind applying STEM in empowering women in STEM, and now champions the circular lubrication and sustainability at RecondOil with solutions for SKF customers. We're going to talk a little bit about how she found her way into lubricants, what she's learned about reliability, about people and about sales, and why she believes application knowledge and sustainability in lubricants are the future. But before we get into all of that, Jade, thanks for joining me. Introduce yourself and tell people from Beyond the Blend a little bit about you.
Thank you for having me, Steve. So at the minute, I work for SKF, as Steve's just said, and I basically support sales with anything RecondOil and lubrication for SKF UK and on a global basis as well. As Steve suggested, I started out in the oil industry by accident. I needed some lab experience from my bachelor's to then go and do my master's, and decided that I actually loved testing oil and analysing the results. So I stayed working for a blending company for 5 years and then moved on to a reliability company running the reliability lab. So I've seen kind of both sides of the industry from a lubricants point of view. Personal life, I love horses. As Steve asked in the question, I used to love fighting. I don't get that much time to train anymore since having a baby. So I'm quite an active person. I'm always dragging the baby out and about in the fields with the animals. But yeah, in general, I love to socialise. I love to network. I love to learn new things from normal, everyday people within our industry, outside of our industry. And at work, I like career satisfaction by solving people's problems. That's where I get most satisfaction, is by helping somebody solve a problem, irrelevant of what that problem is and what the solution is.
Lovely. I mean, there's a fair bit in there, right? So, where are you? You're based up near us, right? So have you always been around here? I mean, where does it start, the journey?
Yeah, so my parents met abroad. My dad was from Sheffield and my mum is from Liverpool. So growing up, we were kind of between the two. My parents resided in Sheffield and this is where we lived. But we went to Liverpool every weekend to see my mum's side of the family. And growing up was really, for us, family orientated. Every night we'd be going to somebody else's house my dad's got 5 brothers, my mum's got 5 sisters and 2 brothers. So we were always at somebody's house, seeing cousins. So family is super, super important to me. And roots is really wherever family was.
Yeah, and I'm very fortunate. I've met you a couple of times, and I want to just connect to the family bit. You're the only person on the earth I know that would take their sister-in-law along to a lubricant expo in Dusseldorf and frame it as a treat for her, right?
Yep. Yeah, I think she was 8 months pregnant as well. It was a rest from work.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. I love it. So, I mean, is the horses linked to Liverpool and Aintree, or is the horses linked to something else, Jay? Tell us about the horses.
So in primary school, one of my best friends owned the farm in our local village where we lived. So when we'd go around to play, we'd end up going to the horses. And my dad also trained to be a jockey. He never raced or anything like that, but he likes horses. They're a waste of money, if you ask my dad, and they're pointless, but he does like horses. So my dad pushed me into learning to ride, and we was always at the local stables. And then once I got old enough, I think I was maybe 13, my dad bought me my very first pony once I was old enough to do everything myself. And I've kind of never looked back. They do take up a lot of time. They're a lot of work. But when I'm without a horse, so when I was in my prime of fighting, when we were fighting semi-pro, my horse went away somewhere else to somebody else for a few years. And I do feel lost without the financial and time burden that is a horse. I feel really lost.
And even now, horses are still an important part of your life, right? You still you share a horse at a stable, or you're lucky enough to have a horse. How does that look?
I've got 3 horses and 20 chickens, Steve, and a house horse, my dog.
A big dog. So tell me, do you name horses like you would any other pet?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. You don't call them 1, 2, and 3. So what would be the horses' names, Jay?
So I've got Dexter, which is my main riding horse. He gets called Daxton very often, which is my son's name. And my son gets called Dexter very often as well. So they get mixed up a lot. And then we have Paco, which is our oldest horse. He's 31. And then we have a horse called El. And it's literally spelled E-L. Because when I was doing the passport, I was in a rush. So horses have passports like we do. I was in quite a rush, and she was like, what are we going to name her? And I was like, I don't know, E-L. So she's got a really rubbish name, but there's quite a funny story behind her rubbish name.
and I'm gonna push this a bit, because you've just taught me something new there, right? About horses having passports. I mean, please tell me you don't have to take a picture of their face, right, and put it on, because they all, I mean, they all look the same.
No, so what happens is the vet has to come, and he looks at the horse's anatomy, and we call it conformation, the horse's markings, and he has to draw the horse's markings and kind of individual characteristics. He has to draw them on this page within the passport, so that it's really difficult. But then also, they all get microchipped, and that number is embedded within the passport, nowadays more digitally. So it very much is like a photo, but the vet's drawing it instead of an actual picture. But maybe you've just set something up, Steve. Maybe we can do digital horse passports with pictures.
Well, I can imagine them with their hats and their glasses on, but it's just my way of thinking. But I mean, thanks for sharing that. I mean, that's lovely to know that's still a passion after, since you were 13, right? And I guess you're describing there something to me already that's talking about discipline and routine.
Yeah.
Because you're responsible for the life of something else, and so on. But then there's something else you've introduced that clearly needs discipline, and that's fighting, right? Yeah. I mean, you may have told this story before, but I've never heard it. What got you into that, and what does it feel like? Is it Mike Tyson says everyone's got a plan A until they get punched in the face?
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
What's it? Tell me how did it start, and what's it like getting punched in the face?
So when I first started working at the oil blending plant, there was a gentleman there, and he used to train. He never fought, but well, he did eventually, but he just used to train mixed martial arts. And I was talking to him one day and I thought, that sounds really good. I'm going to have a go at that. So I did. And then I got addicted, and it literally is like a drug. You can't stop. We trained 6 days a week, 2 to 3 hours a day. It was relentless. But you couldn't get enough. As soon as the session had finished, you'd get home, have tea, go to sleep, go to work the next day and be itching to get back in the gym and get punched in the face again. And it was a proper fight gym. I've been to a lot. We used to travel around the country and train with other gyms, and some of them you go and they really do dance around the kind of physical contact. And I'm going to say, luckily for me, I don't know how lucky I was, but we really went full contact and prepared fighters for fights rather than just to train. So very frequently there'd be bust lips and black eyes, but it was all part of it. And to answer your question, in training, getting punched in the face feels like routine. It just feels normal. It's part of the day. In a fight, especially I'd say your first maybe 3 or 4 fights, it's like a steam train, and you feel like absolutely everything's gone out the window. You forget your name, where your feet are meant to be, what should you be doing next? Oh, I'm actually in a fight. So it's absolutely right. Everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the face, and your first few fights are just chaos, absolute chaos. And then once you've done a few, depends on the time that goes in between the fights, that there's a minimum, well, in our gym we had a minimum of 3 months between each fight, which feels way too long, but it's actually about right. It gives your body time to repair and then start your training camp again. But some people, if they put 12 months between a fight, every fight is like the first fight. So that's how I got into fighting, and I did love it. We did it for 11 years. It's where I met my partner. So yeah, fighting's got a big place in my life. I still go every now and again and have a wrestle or a box. And I fought predominantly boxing for most of the time. I think it was 7-8 years I've just boxed for, and then started with the cage fighting. And we kind of got to a place where you quit your job and go professional, or I've kind of fought everybody at my weight category and the category above. And being a tall, heavy individual as I am, 5'1", 45 kilos I was when I was fighting, the people run out pretty quick, and I absolutely loved my job at the oil plant. So we went to just training and doing local interclubs, which is like a lesser fight, more regular.
Yeah. What, before we sort of jump more into the oily stuff, which we will, I got to ask you, there's been a rise of the celebrity fighter, hasn't there?
Yes.
Over there. And at time of recording, in a number of days, this would have happened. So let's just see whether your the prediction is good.
I know what you're going to ask.
We've got this Jake Paul fellow fighting an ex heavyweight champion of the world. I mean, what would be your opinion of such a matchup? Because for me, looking in, who can't imagine being punched in the face, I imagine being punched in the face by a YouTube celebrity versus a heavyweight champion of the world probably carries a different risk.
Yeah.
So what's your thinking?
I think his biggest risk is his height and weight. Is nothing of Anthony Joshua's. But to give him his credit, he's a very good fighter. Technically, physically, he's fit. So yeah, I want to see Anthony Joshua win, obviously, but I think it's not going to be that straight cut. So I'm going to sit on the fence, because I think the last few fights that we've seen Jake Paul in, he's actually done a really good job, and you've got to kind of respect him as a fighter and not the YouTuber anymore, because he's actually really technical. He's fit. He gets himself in good shape. Respect is given where it's due, and he's definitely due that. But let's hope Anthony Joshua wins.
Yeah. Well, I've heard some commentators say for the good of boxing, he kind of must. I remember when there was a guy running in the 100 meters against Usain Bolt in the final who had come back from a drug test, And I remember the commentator, whilst Usain Bolt was running across the line, said something, significant about it was so important Usain Bolt was one. He might have saved our sport.
Yeah.
And I don't know whether it's dramatic as that, but there must be a credibility issue on the line here as well, right?
Yeah, potentially. And I think a lot of people do get that with the YouTubers that have all started to fight now. But I think fighting's a little bit different to your other everyday sports, because when you're going in there, it kind of is every man for themselves. You're training alone, you're trying to, with your team, you're trying to make sure the opponent doesn't see how you're training, what you're training, because then they'll know what your game plan is. And it takes a lot of work to be a sprinter. I'm not taking it away from any other sport, but it takes a lot of work to get where he's got. So for the good of the sport, maybe yes, Anthony Joshua would win. But also I think Jake Paul, to get where he's got to, he is now a fighter. As I said, in my books, he's a fighter as well as a YouTuber now. I don't think it's great for the sport that tons of these YouTubers start trying to come in and just have a fight when they're untrained. But to get to the level of fighting Anthony Joshua, he's come technically far enough, otherwise it wouldn't be happening. I know money has a big involvement. Maybe we can pay to get ourselves in a fight, but the boards wouldn't risk somebody's life just to let something like that happen. So yeah, in a way I do agree. But second rate, I think when you've been through the fight camps and you've done the whole fight game, it's not easy. It's not something someone can just wake up and go, I'm going to fight Anthony Joshua next week or next month. It's 12 months planning and training for something that big. So yeah, respect's given, definitely.
Yeah, I love it. Well, I also love all the people you work with who are listening to this podcast are going to be slightly more guarded around disagreeing with you, which I think is a lovely picture that I'll take forward. But you're actually able to wag your finger at them, and there'll be a little bit more concern. But that's great. So we heard about the horses being important and fighting. You actually met your partner through that kind of environment as well. So it remains a very important part. And again, just underlines what I see as that sort of discipline, that routine, and that commitment to something that I think is a great attribute that we start to already see a thread coming through your experiences. But I want to go sort of back to the start. So we've kind of managed ourselves between Sheffield and Liverpool. We're now sort of got horses. We're into the fighting, and we're in a lab, right? So you needed lab experience, and you ended up in a blending plant. But what actually happened? When did you realise you weren't going back to that master's route? Now, you said there was something about fighting and you loved the lab, but what was it within that said, no, I'm not going back to academia, I'm actually going forward with this?
So I'd spent maybe a year in the lab at the oil blending plant. So I was maybe 20, something like that. Yeah, 20. And then I'd started getting involved more with the chemistry of the formulations, understanding the additives, and they'd start to put a lot more time into training me. And when I was piecing it all together and reading books outside of work, making sure I fully understood everything, the analytical side of it is what grabbed me. I loved being able to get a data set and understand. So on the blending side, you're more trying to understand how will that perform in this asset that it's intended for. And that's what got me the analytical side of it, which is why I wanted to do the parasitology masters, because that's also analytical. We're looking at certain bodily samples and saying, is there anything wrong with this animal? What treatments do we need? So it was very similar. It was the analytical part. And I just kind of fell in love with the variation of the industry. So that's what kept me with the blending plant. And then when I moved to the reliability company, it opened up an even bigger world. Like the used oil side of things it seems so much more vast, and the problems are so much more technical. There's much more analysis to do. From an analyst point of view, I mean, the guys formulating the blends are probably going to disagree with me on that, because they have to try and foresee all them issues happening. I'm just solving them as and when they happen. But I just fell in love, Steve. I really, really enjoyed it. By the time I had to pick fighting or work, I was already at the reliability lab and managing the lab then. So not only did I love my job, I also was now within a career that I could see development. And in my opinion, it would have been silly to step away from that. And where I am today, that was the right choice, definitely.
Yeah, I mean, I love the story. I mean, it's just as a comment, we've been lucky enough to talk with a lot of people on Beyond the Blend, and I haven't yet met somebody who absolutely deliberately decided to work in the sector. Everybody, some way or the other, accidentally ended up here, and has remained. And you're another one of those people that have done that. I mean, it's amazing, really, isn't it, when we think about what we find.
Ready to stop guessing how lubricant buyers truly decide? Well, come and see us, the Plan, Grow, Do team, at the 30th ICIS World Base Oils and Lubricant Conference in London on the 4th of February. Join our exclusive Buyer Revolution workshop or tune in to our one-off session on buyer behaviour, alongside an event where you'll gain strategic clarity from over 70 experts and secure essential face-to-face time with the entire global market. Be in the room where strategy meets profitability. Search for World Base Oils and Lubricants now to secure your access.
You'd mentioned something in that story about self-learning, and it made me just a question coming up. Are you a self-learner? Is that something that you do? And do you think that's a requirement, really, to get on?
I think it is in the type of role that I do now, and say, for example, field sales for lubrication manufacturers or engineering-based sales, because we can't learn every single issue that's going to go wrong, every single application. So if I go to a site and I see a brand new problem or a brand new application, I will go home and research it. And that will be my evening reading for the week, to make sure that I can pull on other people's experiences that maybe I don't know on the internet, videos, Google, journals, and use that to make my own judgments. Of course, we get support of people that are experienced in that area or with that application, but I always stick by, if you don't try and learn something or use the information to do something and you just rely on other people, you never retain it. So I can talk about RecondOil to someone every single day or around somebody. But if they're relying on me to present it to a customer or to talk about the technology to a customer, they'll never actually learn it themselves. Whereas if I say, no, you do it tomorrow, you listen to me today, you're doing it tomorrow, they will learn it and they will listen. So I think with what we do, it's very important because we need application knowledge. And we also need to be honest and say, right, well, I haven't actually got this knowledge. I've never seen this application before. But I'm going to make sure I understand it and go away. And then when I come back, I will be much better informed. And then we solve the problem. So, I'm definitely a self-learner.
And I mean, I think I just want to hover there for our listeners, maybe those that are at the start of their career, because I think it's a very important point you raise, not just the fact of how important taking your own development is, but just the wealth of content and channels that learning is on, right? You talked about videos, reading, journals. You talked about, all of the stuff. There's forums. There's everything out there. And when I go back to when I began, I mean, we had to be sent on courses. It was really pretty much it. Where now you can own that self-learning. So I just wanted to underline that, because I think it's a very important aspect you bring forward. I mean, look at LinkedIn as an example. I mean, it's a place where it's just a wash of some rubbish, by the way, but some very good stuff. That said, right, great. Look, thanks for giving us that little background into sort of what made you stay. And I'm delighted you did, because I've got to meet you and I've got to know you. And I think that's very selfishly, I'm happy that you did that. But
Good.
there's this thing you wrote a chapter, I understand, in the chemistry behind applying STEM to horses and cage fighting for empowering women in STEM, right? Yeah. So what story was you telling in that chapter? And I think behind that question is, how have those parts of your life shaped the way you show up in what was or is a much more male-dominated world?
Yeah.
I just want to unpick that a little, if I can, because it was directly in empowering women in STEM. So I just want to understand that a bit more.
So for me, it was more to get to the readers. I mean, this book, we were trying to aim it at people who are not involved in STEM or young people coming up through to maybe STEM subjects. And for me, I was trying to show in that chapter that STEM is much more than science and engineering. It can be applied into your everyday life, and it absolutely should. And with me being an analytical person, I do like to make sure I fully understand everything I'm doing to my body or putting in my body or to my animals, putting in my animals' bodies. So yeah, it's kind of, I embrace it, I love it, and I apply it to every single part of my life. For example, my son at the minute, everything that he does, I make sure I fully understand it. I understand the data behind it. And maybe sometimes I go a little bit over the top and I can be a little bit anal and try and understand things too much. So if someone says to me that's red just because it is, not good enough. I need to know exactly why it's red, what makes it red, and what happens if it's not red anymore. So yeah, for me, it was trying to get that opinion across of STEM is much more than just a job. It's much more than just a career path someone takes or an option you pick in school. You can literally apply it to every single part of your life.
Yeah, because you mentioned in the 5 from 5 that you'd like to do more of the school talks, and so you've done some of those, right? You've taken tell us about that.
So I've done a couple of kind of career days at colleges or talks at specific college groups. So I did one for an all-female engineering group quite a long time ago, maybe 7, 8, even 9 years ago now. And I enjoy just to see them go, oh, because I mean, it's a common issue in our industry, right? Lubrication, reliability, condition monitoring. It's not covered in college courses, and it is now a little bit in degrees, but college courses, school courses, it's not covered. So you go and speak to a group of engineers or mechanical engineers, electrical engineers, start talking about reliability and lubrication, and they're like, what is she talking about? So I kind of like to see the light bulb moment of, oh, there's actually much more to this than what we're learning now. And I think it's important to give the young people the options. I think if somebody had come and spoke to me when I was at uni or at sixth form and said, this is part of the world, because let's be fair, children in education, they don't know a percentage of what's actually out there and open from career-wise. I think I'd have still gone, oh, that oil analysis looks good. That looks interesting. Might have a go at that. Maybe not, but I think it's just good to give them more options that are specific to the course they're doing, because they've ended up on that course for a reason. I think it's good to aim at school leavers as well that are maybe decided on what course to do, just to give them the options. But certainly once they get on the course, they need to know the job prospects after that. We don't want them deciding this is not for me halfway through. If they have got an end goal and an end game, they're going to work hard. They're going to make sure they achieve and get there. If they're just doing an engineering course at college or a degree and they're like, well, I'll do something engineering after, just gives them more of a target, something to work towards.
Yeah. And you talk about STEM, maybe not being over in the syllabus. I've had similar experiences going in and talking about sales. Now,
yes,
that absolutely is not on the syllabus in any way, shape, or form. I mean, we might broker marketing, but never the act of selling something.
Absolutely.
I like you talk about those light bulb moments. I remember once talking to a group of students, And it was when I started to talk about the life it had given me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So where I've been able to go, what I've seen, the I wouldn't say the trappings that came with it, like the good stuff, but I think more the fact that that I was able to see a lot and do a lot.
Yeah.
So sometimes it is about applying a career path in very tangible ways to them, isn't it? So
Yeah.
I think connecting with students, absolutely vital as we look to pull people into the sector at its broadest sense. And as we look at Beyond the Blend, what we like to do is we like to show the breadth of role, the diversities within it. And I did mention around this sort of more male-dominated world once before, and I'm very keen that we get the voice of that experience into the podcast, because it's uniquely one that you've experienced, because you are you,
Yeah.
and you've been through that journey. I mean, are there things there that you've seen improve? Has there been struggles, or actually is just your forthrightness actually just bloody got you through it?
Honestly, I've always been oblivious to it, Steve, until I got asked to write that book. I'm like, what we're talking about? Yeah. And I think maybe it is my personality, but I think I've been lucky. So I worked at the oil blending plant. I was one of 3 women on a whole plant of men. Reliability company, I was the only woman in the senior management team. And at SKF, there's 2 women in the UK whole sales team and sales support environment across all the business units in the UK. And I just don't notice it. And maybe I'm just someone who gets on, or I've been lucky. But for example, when I worked at the reliability company, my directors were fantastic. And they literally took me from lab supervisor up to senior management, then running and developing the business development team. And they just said to me, set us up a business development team. We'd never had salespeople really until then. And they kind of challenged me, but supported me just enough at the same time. So I kind of never experienced being the only woman in the room, and never noticed it until that book, and until people started talking about it more, even in front of customers. The only thing you would notice in front of customers is, until I started talking, I kind of wasn't there, but I never felt that until it was made apparent to me, like, oh, women working in engineering roles. So until someone pointed it out, I never noticed it, whereas now you kind of look for it a bit. But I think it is probably a lot to do with my personality, but also probably being lucky as well, just with the support I've had, the mentors that I've had over the years. And I understand that's not everyone's experience, that I'm always one to support another woman in engineering and in industry. And the ones that I do know, there's some quite high up maintenance managers in chemical sites and power plants. I would hope they feel the same as me, but I know some of them have experienced negative side effects of being the only woman in a male dominant environment. But luckily for me, I just don't notice it.
And thanks for sharing that, because I think sometimes we might always look for things that aren't there, and or at least you haven't experienced, and that's great to hear, because I think, again, people listening in, there are environments within this sector where maybe it's almost like something that doesn't exist, and you can seamlessly work through. Because I think there's something you mentioned there about leaders, right? Leaders, mentors. Because if they've created an environment that you can be authentically you and operate, then that's really fantastic. And yeah, whilst you say you might have been lucky, I think you make a bit of your own luck as well.
Yeah,
yeah. So look, let's move out of that space, and let's just move to SKF. You've mentioned them a bit in your previous answer. I noticed a couple of years ago you made that move to SKF and took on RecondOil for the UK. Ambitious. In my research, I noticed you posted about a 7-hour drive as you started the role.
Yes,
yeah. So we do look back on these things.
Yeah.
What pulled you towards RecondOil and that circular lubrication?
So I really loved my job at the reliability company, and SKF had approached me a couple of times, and I think there was something in the water because everyone seemed to come at once. And, oh, Jade, will you come and work here? And I was, no. And then at SKF, I went and spoke to Gavin, and he heads up aftermarket now for the UK. And he said, let me talk you through it. And he talked me through it, and we've got on a Teams call with some other, because I used to work with a product that's involved in RecondOil. And I was like, yeah, it's just another offline filtration system. It's a really good one. Absolutely love it. We used to be distributors for it at my old company. But it's just another one. It's not what I want to do. And then when I actually sat down, opened my ears and listened, it's now merged with this innovative patent chemical technology, and it makes all these differences on a chemistry as well as a mechanical reliability. And I was like, this is interesting. This I can get into. So it was kind of more, when they approached me, I was a bit negative at first once I fully understood it and the benefits. So for me, RecondOil is, yes, it's a sustainable initiative. Yes, it will improve reliability, but it allows me to maintain my technical abilities, as in solving problems, because that's exactly what RecondOil does. It also keeps me within the sales side, because I've never had any formal sales training, as you'll probably tell sometimes, Steve, but I just naturally sell. It's what I do. And it's very consultative sales, but it struck out to me from career satisfaction of, I will enjoy this. And then also with some of my morals, like the sustainability and the reliability side. Reliability had been drilled into me for years at my previous job, and I loved it. I loved going on a failing site or seeing failing assets and then walking away 6, 12, 18 months later and then being like, God, we was like at 90% efficiency. We've not had no unplanned downtime. And I absolutely love that job satisfaction that the reliability industry brings. And RecondOil is very much at the heart of that. In places where before RecondOil, we could never reach them levels of reliability. We would always have to change the oil, or we would always have to put something else in place. And it really has opened up a brand new way of looking at lubrication reliability. So that's what pulled me to it, definitely.
Yeah, so you're able to play with all the toys you like to play with, really.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And I mean, was it from sort of ground zero? Did you start from almost nothing and you've built it up over time? Tell me about that journey.
Yeah, so when I first joined SKF, there'd not really been anything for RecondOil in the UK. They'd got one distributor signed. We were still a distributor today. But nothing had really been achieved just yet, because it is quite a technical subject, is oil filtration. You can make mistakes that cost customers a lot of money and health and safety issues. And there was kind of no one to drive that forward. So we were starting from the ground running. At first, it was quite daunting just getting used to SKF's different businesses. And I mean, it's massive, right? I joined SKF thinking we sell bearings and now an oil filtration system. I was so wrong. But it's humongous. The amount of technologies that we develop and manufacture all to support the reliability of the bearing, it's outstanding. It really is. So it was quite daunting getting used to which business units I'd work with for which things, but also quite good because at the reliability company, I was always free. The directors would say, you can do that if you want, Jade. If it goes wrong, it's on your shoulders. You need to fix it. And I was happy with that. And sometimes they'd have to rein me in a little bit, but they really let me learn and develop by making mistakes or making successes. And at SKF, it was very similar because I was kind of free to work with any business unit, any distributor, any customer that we wanted to. And so I essentially had a really big playing field of sales teams, as well as technical teams, as well as business units. So daunting, but also exciting. And we've developed several marketing strategies and sales strategies over the last 2.5 years. I then fell pregnant. So I joined SKF and within the first month ended up falling pregnant after years of us not falling pregnant when we wanted to. So that was fantastic timing from my son. But SKF were really good with me for that. So that kind of maybe gave me a little break on maybe where it was just starting to get hot. We had a little 4.5-month break, but then I was back at it, and it's going really, really well in the UK now. We've got some fantastic installations that are out there working, and also projects. So it is good. It was daunting, it was exciting, but it was a challenge, and that's what I like.
Yeah, and I love the passion that you talk about that, and it's great to hear, really, because like if you don't care about what you're doing, why should anybody else care, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So really, really important. I mean, this was your first step into a more defined corporate world as well, I guess.
Yes. Yeah.
What again, I'm thinking about lessons for people listening in. What was it like going from with respect to from the lab to maybe a smaller, more nimble or freer environment to one that was maybe conditioned by governance and rules and structure?
Yeah.
How did that feel?
Well, I had a warm-up because the reliability company got purchased by a bigger company 2 years previous. And that was a bit more PLC. So we had a bit of a warm-up to it. But I think joining SKF, my first experience with it was very positive. I got there and everything was ready. I had a laptop, a phone, a car, all on my first day, set up, ready, brilliant. Everyone introduced themselves. People were reaching out to me from all over the world on Teams within my first 2 days. And I was like, wow, this is fantastic, really well organised. I think the only negative to a company of this size is just how slow things progress. So, and I think most PLC companies find that. But where I'm lucky is RecondOil is its own little business division. And we really do, and we have moved at pace. So from when I started 2.5 years ago to today, RecondOil's developed so much. We've got many more options now, more solutions. We've got completely different technologies that we've incorporated into RecondOil. So the whole of SKF are quite slow because we need to be. We've got a big reputation. We need belts, braces, T's crossed, I's dotted. RecondOil is, because it's kind of an innovative startup, it's centered around sustainability. We've had huge investment and huge interest and concentration from the larger company. So positives, organised, set up, brilliant, and speed within RecondOil. The only other thing is, if you want fast answers, don't work for a PLC company.
I love it. So you're able to be far more sort of entrepreneurial, nimble,
Yeah.
all of those things that probably still attract you, but you've got that routine and discipline behind you that the corporate, the PLC dictate.
Yeah.
I've got one question to ask you about RecondOil, and if you don't mind, I just want to understand, are you a happy sort of bed friend with the finished lubes world? How does that cohabit? Does that rub a bit? I'm just interested.
It depends on the lube company. Some of them love us and have adopted this technology, and some of the bigger names in the industry have helped us develop it, certainly the chemical side of the filtration. So they're really on board with it, using it with their own customers, and they kind of have seen if we don't get on the train, we're going to have no choice pretty soon, because sustainability is going to be king soon. So some of them love us and we work alongside with really closely. Others are just keeping the distance. So we've had no negative reactions, but just keeping the distance. I think it's the lubricant sales people that are more afraid of the concept rather than the companies. And I think for them, we're not trying to get rid of oil volume sales. That's not our goal. Our goal is improve reliability, improve sustainability, and they can jump on that with us and enjoy the ride, because we're still offering lubrication. It's still there. We still need the lubrication. We're just trying to look after it a bit better.
Yeah. I've always found that, I mean, my background is in some finished lube space, and I've always found that sort of almost juxtaposition around setting targets for frontline salespeople. So I think your explanation is really a great example. Corporate, directionally, we get the sustainability story, but at the front line, we're targeting salespeople about how many liters they can sell. So we've already got a slight disconnect in the sector, right? We've got a sustainability play going on, yet we've still got blending plant efficiencies driving finished lube salespeople. And hopefully that's just a matter of time before that gets worked out. But
absolutely,
while you're rewarding sellers for selling big volumes, you are driving a certain behavior. And it probably leads me a bit into our biorevolution research, which I know that you've seen some of that. It does talk about buyers are looking to work with suppliers who look with a much more forward view. So those that are looking to develop more 5-year plans versus hit this month's quota are the ones that they're much more they're keener to build relationships with. And I think the more and more people start to look at that data and that research, I hope that will also contribute to the required change. But it brings me to when we met. I've already mentioned the expo when your sister-in-law, 8 months pregnant, was walking around. I was going to use another word, but she might not like to be reminded of the style of walking she was doing. And you joined us very kindly on our first live Beyond the Blend panel at the Lubricant Expo in Dusseldorf. We talked about application knowledge, and I remember you were quite keen. You actually said, if I turn up without application knowledge, I'm no use to the customer. So I'm interested in understanding that, really, because when we went out, again, full disclosure, we were lucky enough to meet for dinner. Well, it was sort of a half dinner, but more drinks. You were showing me pictures of paper and pulp factories, right? You weren't showing me pictures of your horses or your fighting. You were showing me pictures of paper and pulp. So there's a real application knowledge versus just product knowledge. So what does it look like for you in practice, this turning up with application and knowledge? Because if you don't, you're no use to anybody. What does that look like for you and your team?
So no one needs to be an expert on every application because it's impossible. For me, I need to turn up to a user and say they take me to a hydraulic system, okay? Hydraulic systems are quite simple, but the process around it might be very different. The lubricant used might be very unique. The space for breathers or how it breathes or the rest of the process might be very different. And so I don't need to be an expert on that exact process and that exact asset. But what I do need to make sure I understand is hydraulics and how all them factors will affect the hydraulics and the lubricant in the hydraulics. If we take pulp and paper, for example, we had a good learning curve with a customer a couple of months ago. And we're working through the application as we usually would, and it's paper machine oil, some paper machine oil, everything was quite standard. But we weren't kind of seeing the results that we wanted to see. And we got more people within the customer involved. I went away researching, and it was the engineering manager was like, oh yeah, that's not going to work there because there's this that's being put in the tank. And that's something that we learned from. But I'll now think of that for every single application that I go forward for and make sure, right, well, has there been any additional baffles added in there or weirs? And I think as well, it's important because going back to what you said before this question about people having volume sales and trying to hit a quota, I've never known a customer to change the oil because of price. Customers or end users change types of oils that they're using because something's going wrong or something's not working. So if the field salespeople and I turn up and I understand exactly what that system needs, I understand the application, and what I don't understand, I'll ask the customer 50 questions to make sure I do understand. That's what's going to give the customer confidence that, one, I know a bit about what I'm doing, and two, what I don't know, I'm going to make sure I find out. I'm not going to give him a solution based on what I think. I'm going to give them a solution based on collectively what we know. So I think application knowledge is super important, but also working with the experts of that asset and the application. And that is the end user. And I know there's lots more of your research that says that. They want us to turn up informed, but we can only be as informed as we can from the outside. When we show them, I want to work with you, I want to come up with a solution that works for you, not just this asset and application. That's when we then start to see more results and get much better relationships and ways of working with people. Hopefully that answers your question.
No, it does. I mean, it's very insightful because you talk about price and where that plays out. I mean, you're right. The research backs that up. Buyers tell us that application knowledge is number one. Price is somewhere down the list. So I think you bringing it to life like that for us is really helpful. And just again, two data people on the call, so we could bore people here. But 85% of buyers of finished lubricants would prefer to stay with the incumbent supplier. They only change if something is broken.
Yeah, absolutely.
And broken is a small word, but we're multifaceted, right? Relationship, whatever. So I really like just to underline what you say there. If you're leading a sales team or you're leading any form of commercial relationship, that breadth of application knowledge is vital as you add value, and I think that really starts to show out in your work. So look, Jade, we've had a good chat here, and as we sort of round this out a bit, there's a new 20-year-old version of you listening in just now, right? They're there, they're listening, and they're thinking about a career in engineering or lubricants. What is that one piece of advice that you would want them to carry out over the next 10 years? What would you say to them?
Engineering can be merged with hobbies and everyday life. And anything that you really enjoy, if you study engineering or any STEM subject, you can work doing what you enjoy. So, for example, for me, for horses or fighting, I could find an engineering career based within horses or fighting. I just ended up loving lubricants because for me it was an accident. But if this was a purposeful journey, anything STEM or engineering can be applied to any industry and any hobby or passion. There's always a job out there in engineering.
Yeah, I love that. A purposeful job, but be prepared for the accident, right?
Yeah.
Be prepared
definitely.
for the accident, because that's delivered you something fantastic.
You might find a new passion.
You might find a new passion. Is absolutely. So, Jay, thanks for taking us through horses, through fighting, through the lab and reliability work, that circular lubrication piece with RecondOil, and that application-led sales piece. I think you've shared a lot with our Beyond the Blend audience, and I'm delighted that you took time to join us.
Thank you.
Very much looking forward to the reaction of our listeners. And if people want to follow your work, where are they best to do that, Jade?
I would say LinkedIn. I'm quite active on LinkedIn. I was very active before having a baby. A little bit slower now, but LinkedIn is definitely a place to follow me and keep up to date and reach out. Definitely reach out if there's anything people want to discuss. And as you know, Steve, I like to put a lot of networking events on and social events, and I think they're hubs for learning, definitely, and finding places for support.
Yeah, there's some great words there. So yeah, LinkedIn is a great place, but you're right. You've taken that digital space into a physical space, right, with your networking events, and I really enjoyed the one that I joined you in Manchester, and looking forward to the future. Jade, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for your time. We'll speak again soon.
Thank you, Steve. Speak soon.
Lubricant Expo and the Bearing Show North America returns to Detroit from March 17 to 19, 2026. Meet leading companies showcasing the latest technologies in lubrication, bearings, reliability, condition monitoring and plant performance, all in one place. You'll join engineering, maintenance, procurement and R&D professionals, plus OEMs and end users. Attend our world-class conference, network and strengthen professional relationships, access workshops and training sessions, all completely free. This is where new partnerships are formed, deals are done, and the future of industrial reliability is shaped. Register now at lubricantexpo.com/NA.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Beyond the Blend. Be sure to follow us to catch next and future episodes as we continue to explore the people within the lubricant market.